regular meeting of the Mount Pleasant City Commission, Monday, February 27th, 2023, at 7 p.m. Please rise for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Mount Pleasant City Commission recognizes the Anishinaabe and whose ancestral lands the city stands upon today. We acknowledge the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe and recognize that the three bands of Ojibwe, Saginaw, Black River, and Swan Creek, have resided on this land for over 200 years. Our acknowledgement of the full history of the tribe and our commitment to be good stewards of these ancestral lands are an expression of gratitude and appreciation to those ancestors who came before us. We give thanks to the generous care with which the Anishinaabe and those members of the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe of Michigan have given and continue to give to this land and our community. Clerk, please take the roll.
Commissioner Assman?
Here.
Commissioner Bush? Here. Commissioner Chapman?
Here.
Commissioner Eke? Here. Commissioner Wingard?
Here.
Vice Mayor Alsager? Here. Mayor Perschbacher?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, we have a quorum. We will continue. We're going to start out with a presentation of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Tonight, I just wanted to give it's a real short presentation about the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. You've got on your agenda an extension with Fishbeck to provide engineering services to put together an application for us for that program. And so I wanted to give you a short review of that and a chance to ask any questions that you might have. So the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund program overview, it's primarily it's a program that the state has to provide low-interest loans to communities for large infrastructure projects. Now, it's very similar to the Clean Water State Revolving Fund that we have successfully applied to for the Phase 2 water recovery plant project. And if you'll recall, we're looking at getting about $9 million of loan forgiveness on that program there. So the state's been using these revolving funds to provide funding through the federal American Recovery Plan and Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act. And so that's where that loan forgiveness comes from. Now, one modification that we've seen since we did that for the water recovery plant is that the state's requiring a project plan even before they let you know if you've been funded. And so that's what we're looking for this contract extension to provide that project plan. Now, I've got the steps in the process here on this slide. And the very first one is the submitting the intent to apply for the different communities. And we've already done that. And the state's, all those intents to apply that they've gotten amount to about 4 times what they have funding for. And so this round, we may not get funded in, but we're able to apply for the next 4 rounds with the information we're going to get from this, the services provided here. And so these steps here, these are the things that Fishbeck is going to help us out with if we were to award that contract extension. This slide just shows the state's dashboard for the SRF programs, both the drinking water and clean water. Over the last 30 or so years, they've provided about $7.6 billion to different communities around the state. And this is kind of a neat website. If you get a chance to go to it, you can look at each of those projects that light up the state there. So just a quick rundown of the projects that we're proposing with this application. I've got them all listed here. Some of the key projects would be say the water meters. Well, let me back up. I should say that most of these are in the capital plan already, and so we've already got them programmed in. But if we were to get funding through this program, then that would help us to compress those into and get them done, right away. That combined with the low interest that they offer and the potential for that loan forgiveness, it seems like kind of an opportunity we shouldn't miss here. So we've got the water meters. We would get those replaced in real short order compared to what we're doing now, where we're replacing just a few every year. Another big one is the lime removal equipment. Fishback's going to help us hopefully find a better way to dispose of our spent lime at the plant. That's been a challenge for us for a while now. Prices keep going up for that service, and so that's one of the things on the list. There's various upgrades at the plant, somewhat smaller in scale, but things like the HVAC system, the SCADA system, a couple of large meters at the plant, things like this. Let's see, rainy well rehab, that's an important one as well. Our rainy well provides the easiest to treat water that we get from our raw water supply. And we would look at rehabbing that, making sure that it's producing as much as it can. And we'd also look at putting some raw water storage in next to the plant. This would allow us to run that rainy well even through the night when the plant isn't running, so that we could use that higher quality. As far as softness, it's a real good well, and so that would help us with that. I think that's kind of the big projects that we'd be looking for. And so there's a number of services that Fishback's going to provide within the proposal that they put together, and that's in your packet tonight. All of these are to meet that requirements of that SRF program. One of the key things here, I think, is they're going to provide analysis of alternative solutions to these issues that we're trying to solve, and give us an idea about that we're heading down the right track, or that we should be thinking of other things. And that analysis includes no action in each of those cases. And I guess with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Does anybody have any questions?
So just to make sure that I understand kind of the order of operations here. So right now we need to apply for these grant funds, these low interest loans from the DWSRF. We need to make sure that we have a project plan in place already before that to be considered.
So we've put in a notice of intent to apply to the state for a rough amount of what we think those projects might cost. And Fishback is going to put together a preliminary project plan for us, which there's a deadline there for that's coming up pretty shortly. And then they'll put together the final project plan a little bit later than that. And so, and that's something I forgot to mention. Fishbeck, we've been working with them extensively on the wastewater or water recovery side of things, and they've provided excellent service, and we've been happy with it. And we think that they'll provide a good product here and also be able to meet that deadline to apply for this round of SRF funding. Even though, like I say, there's no guarantee that we'll get funding, but it's better to have applied than to not, I suppose. So,
So just to follow up then, for the projects being proposed, how many of those would be included like in the preliminary plan? Or if we were to receive funding, would it be like, I guess, are we applying for funding for all these projects then? Oh,
Yes.
Thank you. I just
Yep.
wanted to clarify that.
Commissioner Eke?
Sometimes grant funders return to the people applying for grants and say to them, we like your project, but it's expensive, and we would like you to modify your project. So hypothetically, I don't know whether the state of Michigan would do that, but if it does that, which of these projects might you consider least significant right now? Or let's say least urgent?
I think that's something that come along with that analysis of different options here. So I can't really answer that here tonight, I suppose. Certainly, there are different priorities within that listing, and so certainly, if the state were to, I don't think that's really how this program generally works. Either they fund it, and that's part of why you go through that entire process of doing the analysis of alternatives and things like that, so that you can kind of figure out if what you're proposing makes sense through that process. But yeah, certainly there's different projects within that group that are higher or lower priority. So
Okay, so follow up. When do you expect, you said the deadline is fast approaching. So when might you expect Fishbeck's, analysis or project plan?
I'm not. Do you know?
Do you have a sense?
I've got the Deputy Director Tim Hilton's here. So April 1st for the preliminary project plan. Would that necessarily include the entire analysis, though? No. Right. So that's June. Yeah. So the final plan comes in June, and they'll have that total analysis by that time.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Jason, you had also said that some of these projects have already been budgeted. So if we weren't able to get, some of these projects would still happen.
Yes, correct. I'd say the majority of them actually, other than the stuff dealing with the raw water, I think the raw water storage wasn't in the currently approved capital plan. It is being proposed in the plan that you'll see this year yet. So yeah, a lot of these projects would happen anyway.
Yeah. We're
It's
just hoping to get funding.
Yeah.
So we can use money in other areas.
Yeah, low interest loan and the potential for some loan forgiveness as well, but also get those things done in a quicker time frame. So,
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you, Jason, I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
I move.
Second.
There's a move and a second. All those in favor, say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries. At this time, we have input on agenda items from the public. If you wish to speak on one of the agenda items, you may step to the podium. You'll be asked to state your name and your address, and you'll be given 5 minutes. If you're joining us by Zoom, you will use the raised hand feature or *9 if you're joining Zoom by phone. Once you enter into the meeting, you'll be asked to state your name and address and be given 5 minutes to speak. Is there anybody there in the land of Zoom?
No raised hands.
Okay. Are there any emails?
No, there are not.
Okay, not having any raised hands in Zoom, and I do not see any public in our chambers tonight, so I'm going to close the public input. We'll move on to the receipt of petitions and communications. Manager DeSenza.
Receipt of petitions and communications includes minutes of the Airport Joint Operations Management Board, January, minutes of the Downtown Development Authority, October.
Okay. Are there any items that the commission would like to have removed from the consent items and moved into the agenda? Okay. Seeing no raised hands, Manager DeSenza, can you please go through the consent items?
Consent items this evening includes approval of the minutes of the special meeting held February 6, 2023, approval of the minutes from the regular meeting held February 13, 2023, approval of the minutes from the closed session held February 13, 2023, consider recommendation from the Planning Commission to reappoint Corey Frederick as the representative of the Planning Commission to the Zoning Board of Appeals, consider approval of a contract with Central Asphalt, Inc. for the 2023 Thin Overlay Project at a cost of $594,082.95 for several city streets. Consider approval of a contract with M&M Pavement Marking for 2023 pavement markings and budget amendment on the same for $27,435.40. Consider acceptance of $75,000 from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority for a neighborhood enhancement grant, authorize the mayor to execute the necessary documents, approve the program guidelines, and approve the allocation of additional funds. Consider approval of a sole source purchase with Metron Fariner LLC at a not-to-exceed cost of $60,000 for AMI equipment residential water meters. Consider approval of an amendment to the professional services contract with Fishbeck Engineering as part of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Program application and consider associated budget amendment for $68,000. Consider approval of a contract extension with the Manic Smith Group for professional environmental consulting services and groundwater analysis for $26,700 related to the city's landfill site, and consider approval of payrolls and warrants.
Thank you. We do not have any public hearings tonight, so we will move on to new business.
Mayor, I
Yes.
need a motion.
We need
Oh.
a motion.
You're right. I'm just like whizzing through this day. I will entertain a motion to accept the consent items as presented.
I will move.
Seconded.
Second, all right. There is a motion and a second. All those in favor? Say yes.
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 All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Now we'll move on to new business. Consider approval of a contract with F&M Concrete LLC for the 2023 sidewalk project and budget amendment for the same. Manager DeSenza.
The city received 6 bids for sidewalk repair and replacement for 2023 projects. This includes various sidewalk repairs throughout the city, as well as new sidewalk on Birch Street. An alternative bid was requested for sidewalk gaps in 2 other neighborhoods as well. Bids came back higher than anticipated, with the low base bid at $12,590 over our anticipated budget, and the base and alternative bid combined for the low bidder being $17,640 over budgeted allotment. Staff is recommending that the City Commission award the contract to FMN Concrete, who is the low bidder. The City Commission has 2 options. Option 1, which is to approve the base and the alternate bid, along with a budget amendment of $17,640. Option 2 is the approval of only the base bid and a budget amendment of $12,590. Staff is recommending approval of option 1.
Are there any questions? Anything that needs to be clarified? Okay, I will,
I
yes.
have a question.
Yes.
What's the anticipated overage? I mean, it's more than 10%, it seems a lot.
Yeah, just higher concrete prices and labor prices coming in already. So you'll see some of the other things that we had talked about in the consent agenda were a little bit higher as well too. Though we did have one come back lower than anticipated, but concrete and labor being two that
That's
just
the main
went up
driver.
significantly last year, yeah, and higher this year.
Any other questions? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move.
What is your motion?
I will move that we accept the staff's recommendation that the city commission award the contract for 2023 sidewalk project to F&M Concrete LLC and the rest of it.
Okay, so we're looking at option one?
Isn't that what staff is recommending?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept option one and a second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next, we will look at, consider approval of budget amendments for projects carried forward from 2022.
City staff has prepared a list of budget carryover items from fiscal year 2022 to consider as a budget amendment. Typically, these budget amendments would be brought on a per project basis. However, due to longer than usual lead times and supply chain issues, the city has a larger number than usual of carryover projects from 2022. Now, it's worth noting, and I want to stress this too, that fund balance has already been essentially committed for these projects. So a budget amendment here does not affect our unassigned budget balance. This just simply allows us to spend the money that we anticipated carrying over from 22 into 23 for all of these various projects. A full list of the projects can be found in the included staff report. Staff is recommending a motion to approve these budget amendments.
Are there any questions for clarity?
Nope.
Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move again. I'll move that we accept staff's recommendation to the city commission to approve the above budget amendment so staff can complete these tasks.
Okay, is there a second?
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, at this time, we have announcements on city-related issues and new business. This is where the city commission and/or staff may present something they wish to discuss. Is there anyone on commission that wishes to bring something forward? Commissioner Wingard?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was, forgot where we were in the meeting. I had talked to Mary before, and Amy before. The Morning Sun had reported on the Mount Pleasant Tiny Homes organization. It's a new organization looking to build tiny homes for unhoused people as transitional housing. It'd be property in Union Township, on the east side of Union Township, I believe, near Hunter's Ale House, I want to say. I think it's a really amazing project that we should be looking at supporting. As far as like what we can do right now, it sounds like they're looking for community support more than anything. And I know following along with the city commission for a while, there's been a number of discussions about challenges with the unhoused community and just having a lot of unhoused members and homeless people in our community facing this challenge. And so I think this being a new idea, new to our area, I think it's something that a lot of us could be doing well to voice support and spread awareness of. I appreciate the Morning Sun doing articles on it and getting the word out there. I hope the organization does more to website
access or anything on fundraising, but right now they're looking for community support. When they do public hearings in Union Township, I hope to be able to voice my support for the organization. But I think as far as looking towards our long-term goals, I know 2024 objectives and goals is something that we're working on currently. I think as far as when we have discussions about housing, if we could work to include some kind of goal to, as far as outreach at the smallest form, something more if possible to support the unhoused, and just referencing that struggle as part of the house. They're a part of our community. If they don't have a home, they fall under the category of working with housing. So that's something I'd like to work on more.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to state anything? Bring something forward? I would like to say that my practice, Ronan Psychological, we have a small house that is a low plexiglass house that people have been filling with coins that is collecting money for this project. We do support it immensely because there are so many that have home insecurity within our community that we need to be more active in helping them as well. If there are no more announcements, we will move on to the public comment on agenda and non-agenda items. If you are in the audience and would like to come forward and speak on something on the agenda or non-agenda items, please step to the podium, state your name and address. You'll be given 5 minutes. If you're joining us by Zoom, you may use the raised hand feature or *9. If you're joining Zoom by phone, you'll be asked to state your name and address once you enter the meeting, and you'll be given 5 minutes. Is there any raised hands on Zoom?
No, there are not.
Are there any emails?
No, there are not.
Again, seeing no public has snuck in here in the past 5 minutes, so I'm going to assume that we are not going to have any more public comment tonight. I'm going to close the public comment. Being that it is 7:27, I would like to, if the commission is okay, to forego the recess and move right into the work session. Yes? Okay. So we'll move into the work session. We are discussing downtown parking.
So I'm going to have our Downtown Development Director, Michelle Sponseller, come up to talk about the survey that we had conducted since our last meeting. So for those of you that likely recall, the last time we had discussed this, the City Commission had expressed interest in getting survey feedback from folks in the downtown. So Michelle was the spearhead on that project. She'll talk about the findings of that survey and also talk us through some bullet point topics and some specific focus areas which we want to get the City Commission's thoughts on.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Everyone's favorite topic tonight, right? I know you're just chomping at the bit. You can't wait, right?
Excited.
I know. That's how I feel about it often.
Been thinking about it for 2 weeks.
Thinking about it for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Hopefully it was good and not a nightmare scenario. Sorry. All right, well, let's move on. So going back to April of 2019, sort of just a quick recap, the U.S. Court of Appeals declared chalking tires to enforce timed parking violations as unconstitutional. At that time, we did a very simple survey for downtown business owners, asking them, what would you like us to do at this time? At that point, we sort of put a halt on all enforcement other than overnight and ADA spots. That seemed to be working fairly well at the beginning. Enter COVID for a couple of years, and we worked through that, tweaked it a little bit more. And then over the past, I'd say 6 months, we had a handful of business owners reach out and express a little bit of frustration with customers coming in saying there's not enough parking, meaning on the street. We did some internal discussions as far as enforcement goes. We had a work session last fall. The commission then said, well, we're interested in sort of doing another pulse check. We looked at doing sort of the simple survey again, and it was me who said, if we're going to do this, let's ask little bit more robust questions. Let's ask customers on top of business owners and staff as well, because we could primarily get a different answer from each one of those groups. As it turned out, it was fairly close what everyone sort of agreed on, and the areas that they were not in favor of, I would say, generally speaking, also agreed on. So what I did out of all of the surveys, all of the questions, was sort of distill it down to a few simple points. We sent it out to our e-newsletter list, 3,987. We sent it out to our business owner and staff list, 229. Daytime permit holders, overnight permit holders. We also put it on its social media and our city blog. In return, we had 487 customer survey responses. I thought that was outstanding. I was really happy to see that. 55 staff responses, 29 business owners responses. And I will tell you, some of the staff and business owners you will also find if you go through the list of names. So some filled both out, some only filled the customer survey out, but in the end, I think we had a really great response. So kudos actually to our communications director, Darcy Orlick, for her help with that as well. So key questions and themes. I did sort of a handful of the ones that I thought were probably going to be the focus of our conversation this evening, and where do we go next? One of the questions really was asking how does the public feel about metered parking? Paid parking, if you will. Not a surprise to find the resounding answer to be no. That I don't think anyone is really surprised at that answer. If you are, raise your hand. So let's go through some of the key questions, though. Responses of how would you rate downtown satisfaction with parking in downtown? Convenient and easy, 44.72. Less convenient than other areas visited, 29%. Inconvenient and difficult, just shy of 15%, a deterrent from coming downtown, a little more than 10%. How do you describe the availability of parking downtown? Acceptable distance away, 45%, close proximity, 29%, dedicated off-street parking where I can always park, a little more than 7%, unacceptable distance to my destination, but it's my only option, 17%. And we did have a little more than 1% saying, well, I walk, I bike, or I take some sort of public transit. Do you ever park in a municipal lot? Easy to find and convenient, 52%. Unsure if I can park there legally, 23, almost 24%. Not sure where parking lots are available to the public, 14%. I prefer to prefer to park on street, 8%. And again, the little more than 1% doesn't really apply as I bike or walk. Have you ever tried to patronize a downtown business and left because you were unable to find parking space? 48, almost 49% said yes, 51 said no. In hindsight, I wish I had been a little bit more specific on this question, I will tell you, and specified on-street versus parking lot. For next time, perhaps. How far are you willing to walk from your parking space to your destination? Approximately 80% said between 2 blocks or 1 block to 2 blocks, which I was very happy to see, as most of our downtown within a parking, when you find on-street parking, you can get there really fast. There's a public parking space or public lot less than a block virtually everywhere downtown. Would on-street paid parking deter you from parking downtown? As I said, almost 76% said yes, 24 no. And then I put in a note for additional comments. This is where some of the anecdotal comments come into play, where people were referencing restaurant patios from being a deterrent. So you'll see in the considerations below, one of those would be moving those in the winter months. So if we're ready, we can go through these considerations. I was curious to know what your thoughts are on these. If you have questions, maybe somewhere else in the survey, get the ball rolling.
I think a lot of our observations.
Can you move your mic?
Sorry. A lot of our observations on this issue are rather anecdotal, like da 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 this, and this is what I hear, da 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 da. And I think this survey does begin to kind of scratch the surface of like why these things are happening. But I am concerned that maybe, about exactly what the sample was in terms of who was surveyed, in terms of
As far as
like who respond, like the people who responded and whatnot.
as far as where they were from, Isabella County or age, I'm sort of digging in a little bit there.
Yeah, it's only, whenever you do a survey like this, it's like whoever just chooses to respond, basically.
True.
Right. So it's people who are moderately engaged. So that kind of skew, I'm just throwing that out there. One thing I will say is I wanted to anecdotally mention that I have been trying to notice over the last couple weeks, because I do live downtown, and I've been purposely like driving through downtown at certain times of day and whatnot. And I noticed that specifically, these, I was really excited to see the data back this up, between about 8:30 and 9:30. I should clock it, but there's been a few times where I've driven down and all of a sudden I see 5 cars parking at once, all right down there in front of the banks at the corner there. And that's just in a matter of a couple minutes. And if you look at the data, it says like it's settled right around 70%. It's 70% arrive between 8 and 10 a.m. 70% say they only park about a block away from, or on their same block as their business. And 70% say they have less than 2 minutes to find a parking space. Funny how all those numbers are nearly identical.
Oh, those all line up, yes.
So that just kind of backs up, I think, what a lot of people are saying anecdotally, that like, people are coming in and they're parking at 8:30 in the morning right in front of their businesses, and then they're just staying there all day. So,
Yes.
yes, sorry.
No, I
I
would
just
say
wanted to-
there's a number of anecdotal comments regarding that. The challenge is though, and this was something when we could chalk tires,
Yeah.
unless you have, and I'm going to use the word robust, parking enforcement. And by robust, I mean almost, I'm going to say on the half hour, we would have at that time seen what we would have called a 3-hour shuffle. It really wouldn't, it would
yeah.
not be any different.
Yeah,
So in order to have that response, you would need someone really dedicated in doing that. And of course, tracking is not an option anymore. So then you have to be looking at what is the actual return on investment to do something like that. When again, the results are people are finding a parking space within 2 blocks and they're making it work anyway. So.
but I will say that 50% of people like turning away because they weren't able to find a parking spot. I mean, that's about what I probably would have expected in terms of numbers. That's kind of a scary number that, I mean,
Well,
50% of people say at one point they chose to not park downtown. That's a pretty high number.
But the follow-up on that was, or the lack of follow-up in hindsight, I would say is the more, the challenging aspect, because I didn't ask what time was that taking place? Was there an event happening to dig into those details?
I see what you're saying, yeah.
So,
But then if you go back, I mean, 51% said they've tried to patronize business downtown and left. And then 2 questions later, would on-street paid parking deter you from downtown, was 75% yes.
Yeah,
That
Yeah.
number is even bigger, right?
right.
right,
Michelle,
again, that is not a surprise.
No, that's
You
true.
said yourself that the question didn't specify on-street parking or parking lot with it, so I think it's a little skewed with.
Right. I tried to come at it in a few different angles, rather than just ask that simple question, follow it up with how long does it take you to get to your destination? What are you willing to walk to? That's why the number of questions, quite frankly, rather than just stick with the 3 or 4, if you will.
Right.
So,
I just wanted to clarify something real quick. So yeah, the question, so have you ever tried to patronize a downtown business and left because you were unable to find a parking space? 51.44% of people said no to that. So they haven't tried to patronize, left, they haven't left now. I mean, 48% saying yes, they have left isn't great and everything, but as we were talking about, there's contention over the questions wording and everything. I just wanted
so
to clarify.
under the considerations, there's an assortment. Some of these are very low level, simple to do, like reminding business owners and staff where to park. That's something that I do a couple times a week, quite frankly, just as in course of conversation, or I'm in a merchant meeting, I always throw that reminder out, and some of them look at me like, yeah, okay, we've heard this before, and sometimes the reminders work. So working from the top down, continue not enforcing on-street or in parking lots as survey results show walking distance and times to be short and easily identified. Any thoughts or questions on that?
As someone who lives downtown and then goes to work and then comes back home for lunch and everything every day, I mean, I find spots. I'm one person, so I mean, I'm not a whole group of customers coming in for the whatever event a business is putting on or anything. I'm one person, but I do find the parking within a block or two, and it might take me a moment, everything. But coming to a downtown area, I feel like it's a little bit a little expected. Like it wasn't anything shocking to me when I moved downtown of like what the parking situation was. But again, I'm not a business owner trying to bring in a group of people all at once or anything like that. I'm personally just kind of looking at everything. I'm fine with leaving parking not pay to park. Like I'm fine with that.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sure that I know you don't have to tell us who, but I'm sure that a higher concentration of complaints are probably coming from certain businesses in certain areas. So maybe since we have so many people saying, well, I don't really have any issues, and yet, or 50-50, and other people saying, well, I do have issues, find out, are the issues really just around a few businesses? Is there like a parking dead zone, so to speak, that where, let's say it's like around the banks, where you've got, 6 to 10 employees, if they're all coming in separate cars in that downtown area, how fast does a 2-block radius fill up? Because maybe it is right around that center. I don't want to throw the banks under the bus, but that's just.
I would tell you, without, there's no top secret notification here, but I have not had the complaints coming from the financial institutions.
That's what I'm saying, the other way around. I'm saying the businesses around the
businesses
banks.
around them.
Yes, because, so banks, what is the gravity, what is like they're, in a way, of course, their business depends on their customers, but there are often branches elsewhere that people can do businesses other than the banks downtown or whatnot. It's not like the type of place where, if you want a sandwich real quick or something like that. I'm talking about the more like merchandise type, service type industry type places. Then I see a bank more as an office, even though it does serve customers.
Right.
So
unfortunately, unless it's a vehicle that is eye-catching, I'm not sure if I would.
Yeah, and I guess I have a better way of putting this too, is that a bank, a customer is a necessary customer in terms of if you have to go to the bank, you have to go to the bank. But if you want to get a sandwich, it's a want, and I could just, you know what I mean? It's like, it's easier to make that change, or it's an impulse. Like I'm talking about the impulse buys, the businesses that sell impulses.
More of the retailers.
The retailers, retailers, restaurants and whatnot.
How accessible is that retail purchase?
Right, because a lot of times those are like your extras in life. Like you don't have to do that. But also sometimes it's just 15 minutes, it's on a whim or whatnot. I mean, that's where I anecdotally hear issues, is that I don't want to, and I know there was a very low response to that 15-minute time zone, and that's fine. That was my idea, but
That was a good question, though.
But it might be applicable to some businesses, is what I'm thinking. I would like to do a little research to see whether or not like we're getting like certain businesses like who have a quick service or something like that. Who are they the ones having the issue, or is it? Do you understand?
No, I do. I would tell you that who I've heard from, retail, service, and restaurant. So it sort of, I say, runs the gamut.
Right.
And sometimes it is a certain time of year that is driving more foot traffic. It could be a certain day. There are situations that people may bank more often, and it's an imperfect system that we are constantly tweaking. Parking management is, it's a big challenge simply because there's so many variables to it. If we had all the same type of business downtown, it'd be much easier to try and figure this out. But when you have so many variables working for and against the situation, we're, like I said, we're constantly tweaking it every year. So
Yeah, so I think asking a survey question in the future too, like what time of day, what type of event, because like I said, in the data that I was just talking about, where 70% of people who come in before 10 o'clock basically don't have problems finding a parking space. So then it is that person who's trying to access that like retail business hour, retail services type that I think is having the issues.
So the second consideration was continue encouraging business owners, staff, downtown residents to park in municipal lots and eliminate day and overnight permits. Did a lot of thinking on this one. I would tell you that certainly daytime permits, I don't think would cause any issue. I would like to see as many business owners and staff go into the lots as possible. So if a permit is standing in the way, let's eliminate that. They're not a great source of revenue. The most that we have ever sold for 7 and 8, I believe, was 76 permits, and it's not a huge revenue source, but it is something that to take into consideration. However, the overnight permits, I'm not sure I would go the route of eliminating those because it does play into winter weather like we've just had. And if we don't have a mechanism to get email addresses and phone numbers when we're looking to switch from one side of the lot to the other, that mechanism then is gone. So, yes.
How many lots or how many spaces are in that first lot? That you said the most you sold was?
So the permits are lots 7 and 8. Brought my handy dandy list with me. So parking lot 7 is 50 spaces and parking lot 8 is 76 spaces.
Okay.
And that numbers went down over time as we've not been doing enforcement. And then with COVID, it just sort of has trailed off over the last few years. So
I think if it's not a huge revenue source, and that sounds like a great solution. Like if there are empty spaces there, if that's something that can be done.
If I'm understanding you right, it would still be listed as a lot designed for business owners and staff?
No, it would just be what we call an all-day lot, so a 10-hour lot, and so it would just not require a permit to park there. And so if you're a customer and you're going to park in parking lot 8, so this is at Lansing and Broadway, you can park in there if you're going to go do business at, let's say, Caldwell Banker, or you could park on the street. But it's also an area where the staff can park there all day long. They don't have to worry about moving their car. They are not on the street, which is considered the prime parking for your customers. So, and same with parking lot 7, which is on University in between Illinois and Michigan Street.
Oh, okay.
I know them by number, so I'll try and give you the location if I reference those.
Thank you.
I wanted to jump in, but I didn't know if anyone else was going to first, so I'd already spoken. I do like that idea of eliminating like day passes, especially when we go to the question, do you ever park in municipal parking lots? You have 23% are unsure if they can park there legally. 14% aren't sure what parking lots are available to the public. And then, so I think that would affect a good chunk of people being surveyed for here of like and as part of like encouraging people to go to these lots. As an overnight parking pass holder, I do agree with you that it's a good idea for overnight parking passes to remain in place because there is, as we're talking about benefits of like snow removal, we need to have cars moved so that the next parking spots it's nasty out there, it's disgusting. So yeah, I appreciate that. But there's also, and then there's also the fact of like, we want to make sure that someone who lives downtown probably isn't parking a vehicle for an extended period of time or anything. So if a vehicle's broken down or needs to be moved or anything to a shop, we want to probably get that going and everything. So that gives room. If we're limiting parking passes though for the day, maybe drop the price on the overnight parking passes. I hate to be my own advocate here, but I mean, throwing that out there, I'd wait for a second on that.
For the overnight permits, you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, they're $60 and everything, and if we're only making, I think, yeah, $60 twice a year, so it's
No,
$100.
actually, they're $25
Never
for
mind,
6 months.
I don't know what I'm paying.
I don't know if we could drop them a whole lot less, just to
Ignore
cover
me, I don't know
the
what I'm
cost of the
doing anymore.
sticker, but that's okay. We try and simply keep those very economical
Yes.
because the idea is to have as many people with that permit in their back window that we can help track that, so, but yeah.
A question I did have, and this isn't part of the discussion, but the constant contact email list.
Yes.
Where did that come from? How do we collect those emails?
For the permit holders?
Are they, is it permit holders?
Yep, so
Okay,
their
perfect.
daytime and overnight permit, the forms, when filled out, ask for an email address.
Gotcha.
I use those if we're going to close a lot for an event, or we know that there's a big snow coming, we'll send a message and essentially it's huddle your cars together and, we can clean the lot better, things like that. So it's just something that we routinely ask. So number 3, continue to enforce no parking on downtown streets between 4 and 6 a.m. Again, back to the weather challenge. I really would like to keep this in place and just looking for agreement. I'm looking, head nods, yes, okay. Don't want to assume, you know what they say. Continue to enforce ADA parking spaces both on street and in the lots. Increase visibility of municipal parking lots by installation of new signage at the entrances. Just so you know, this is already planned. It's part of my capital improvement plan for this summer. I'm just letting you know. Certain lots have 4 entrances, some only have 1. It sort of depends. So one of the things I'll be working again with our communications director on is having good, clean signage that isn't busy, just simply states that it's a municipal lot, possibly the number of spaces and the available time that you have to use it. So we can really make it easy for people to know the difference between a municipal lot and a private lot. Because there are a number of private lots. There's, I believe it's 21 private lots downtown. So, all right. Let's see here. Develop marketing, such as e-newsletter articles, social media posts to educate on downtown parking, something that we haven't done in a number of years. It was before COVID that we really did anything major when it comes to just key messaging when it comes to parking, and I'm planning on working on that again, bringing it back. Sort of other things took precedence. And then the last one is encourage the removal of restaurant patios in the winter months if they're not going to be utilized by the businesses. Some are utilized, some are not. But those who are not using them, ask them to remove them mid-November like we did previous to COVID. So those were the various considerations. I didn't know if you had any questions about any of those, or you had any you wanted to throw into the mix yourselves, or hopefully not something along the lines of a parking garage. Because I have all the numbers if you want to know what the latest cost is per parking space. It's $31,000.
Good
Yeah.
time.
We don't.
I really like the idea of the eliminating the day spaces, if that, I mean, I just don't know how easy that is to do. The day permits.
Day permits,
yeah.
quite simple. It's just reaching out, have a conversation with finance. If it's something that we want to keep in place through September, and that's when we tend to roll those over, or it's something that we want to eliminate sooner, so.
Well, I just didn't know if it, because you talked about signage, and that would be a change in signage, and then, to do a campaign with people who work downtown to say, hey, now, we're gonna have this available at no cost, and it's great if you can park there, but if not, then, hey, we got more parking for all. You just make, just have a push, like, yeah, I don't know when a good time would be to launch that. I mean, I like as soon as possible, but, whatever works, like, with the budget and the department and the whole plan.
Yeah, like if they're paid through September or something like
Right.
that.
Yeah. I want to get a handle on, because not everyone paid exactly on the same day.
Right.
They paid in the same month. So to figure out what that dollar figure is, go through the process. I don't know what that entails. So I want to make sure that I don't stick my foot in my mouth for the finance director who's probably listening.
You could probably, I mean, I'm sure they would have some recommendation, but like, for example, when people have like an overage on like school funds or something like that, they get like, it's a letter they get, but if you have an email list, just send an email and be like, should you have an overage? Would you like it to be A, B, C, like what they want done with it,
Something like that. But once we get beyond that, it would be very easy to make that change. Most of these, in fact, would be. Most of them are a continuation of doing what we've been doing primarily, so it does make it very easy, so.
Yeah.
One thing I'd say is if we do, it's sounding like we probably are going to end up eliminating day parking passes. It sounds like that's a lot of our contact with people who are parking in the downtown area. So if we wanted to do another survey in the future, making sure we're able to reach the same survey
It's
group.
a good question, and here's how I'm not as worried about that as the overnight permit holders, because the daytime permit holders also are working in a business downtown. So I have another means of reaching out to them. It could be asking the business owner or other members of staff to pass it on to the rest of the staff, or it's as simple as me walking in, shaking someone's hand, and saying, "Hi, I'm Michelle. I want to talk to you about parking." It'd be as simple as that.
So you're asking to eliminate those passes for the people that work
The
downtown?
daytime, yes.
Why?
Because again, what we're looking at is to drive more people into those lots. And if we're not going to be enforcing that portion of going through the lots, why sell a permit if you wouldn't be enforcing within that parking lot?
I don't know. The parking doesn't seem to be a problem to me. Because at worst case scenario, if I had to park here, which is open all day long, I'm like, 3 blocks away from anything I need downtown?
True, but I would say that would make you an anomaly to some degree.
But I also don't drive around a parking lot for 5 minutes trying to find the closest spot to the store. I park where it's available and then just do my business.
Could we improve the stairs going up there and like mark them better? And those stairs are a heck of a walk and everything.
I can
we
talk
put
to
a
the
lift?
parks director about that. I
Can we
guess.
do a lift?
Do a
Just-
lift?
Yeah, just like a ski lift or
Oh,
something,
yeah.
that'd be great.
I considered sledding down it last week, but I did not do
You could
that.
probably
I mean,
do
it would be
now.
fun to do some like interpretation signage there, maybe to make it into like your fitness goal, like you could, promote that walk, like make it a goal.
Oh, up
like,
and down the stairs?
Yeah, you could make it like that.
Use your Fitbit?
Well, like some interpretation signage or whatnot, like if you're talking about signage, like, and that would connect more people to the office, and not to mention a green tree would probably be into it. It would improve our kind of a walking corridor, and, you make it fun.
Michelle, I can tell you someday how many steps it is.
Yeah.
Mary will have a stopwatch. She can
tell
time
you.
people.
Yeah, we could do some
Have a
Q&R
leaderboard.
codes, and you hit it when you park your spot in one of the lots, and then you walk, and it will tell you
Make it a
everybody how
challenge.
much. Yeah, make it a
Use
challenge.
the CVB app, we
Yeah.
can call it a challenge.
Yeah, there you go.
I will say, speaking of fun stuff like that, though, in terms of the parking changes, if it's a little bit of a rush on it, because I know how these things work, but it would probably make a lot of sense for public use if it happened at around the same time that we were putting up the downtown, like, we're going to be doing Broadway Central version 2 this year, because people who still complaining about that, it's kind of like, well, but you're getting more too in the end too. So it'll kind of hopefully take some of that complaint away.
The one thing I would say, though, is kind of going back to number 7 about encouraging the rule of restaurant patios is because looking at like Ponder and then Midori, those are the 2 big ones there. They're pretty well built in. I mean, they seem pretty
They're
solid.
just
and
sitting on
everything.
top of the asphalt. They're not actually built
yeah,
in,
it's just
but-
like they kind of, it looks like as far as like how they're built and everything, they're not easily disassembled is
true.
kind of,
Yep. True.
and my one concern with that is that then if they're putting them out, taking them in, putting them out, they lose the draw of having that there, of like not being interested in. And I feel like having businesses that have that patio space, when we do Broadway Central, helps kind of anchor that whole experience of the downtown area. If you have businesses now not interested in putting back a patio because I'm just gonna have to take it out in a few months, is Broadway Central still the same look as it is? And I do like Broadway Central. I like having the open downtown area, and that's just.
It certainly would look the same in the summer. I'm just looking to move those out of the way in the winter.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I'm saying like, so during what the motivation to then reinstall them from year to year. So it'd be kind of just approaching that delicately, I guess, because I do agree. Yeah, I mean, like they're not being used. So, I mean, they just get covered in snow and everything. But especially when they're not easily disassembled, they kind of, looking at them, they're built to just sit there more than anything.
Well, and I will tell you, that is why I put in here, encourage the removal rather than change the policy. So what we can do this year is have those conversations, we can encourage it, and we can always revisit that if we'd like.
Gotcha. Thank you. That was my last thing.
And Ponder Coffee does have.
Yes, they have the
fires
outdoor
and-
fire.
Yeah, and they shovel it
Fire.
off and you can
They're
sit
like the
outside.
only ones though, I think, who,
Well,
yeah.
they are.
Yeah, because you can get a
I
blanket
just said
inside.
you really only
Yeah.
need two.
Can we offer any assistance, or is this opening up a can of worms in terms of, because in my opinion, it's just a cost of doing business. Like, if it's gonna work for you, and I appreciate having them, but I also think business owners have weighed these options and decided whether or not it's a good solution for them, or to have these patios, but can we offer any sort of storage option for them for the stages, or business, like?
I don't think we have anywhere large enough to
Yeah, the only, I mean,
do that.
don't have any storage.
the Parks and Rec shed down in Island Park is pretty significant, but yes, I know it gets used for lots of other
I was gonna
things.
say, it's also
Yeah.
full, and I will tell you, I call it the barn, DPW is also
Yeah.
bursting at the seams, so
Yeah.
I don't think.
Probably a can of worms, just, yeah.
It was a good idea, I don't have a solution for it at this time.
I think every time we talk about parking, it's interesting because we talk about not having enough parking and then we shut the whole street down of Broadway during the summer, right? I don't know how we reconcile that. I really don't understand how we reconcile doing that, but yet spend so much time talking about the lack of parking, of prime parking, right? I just don't understand how we reconcile that and continue to do it.
I can give it to you in a word. The philosophy behind it is for placemaking. And I will tell you that if there was green space somewhere
Sure.
downtown.
I agree.
We probably wouldn't really be having that conversation. But
Sure.
unfortunately, we don't have that option. So when we have events, we close streets, we close parking lots. It's just,
No. I mean, all the parking, like for the Broadway Central. Not
Well,
for, that's what I mean.
no, that's okay. I came prepared. As the kids say, with the deets. I know I'm aging myself, aren't I? Terrible joke.
Yeah.
So just to sort of go over this, so patios take up 6 parking spaces collectively for all the patios. Broadway Central then takes up 8. So on-street parking, we have 429 parking spaces though. And then we have a total on-street and in lots of 2,011 parking spaces. And then we have 21 private parking spaces.
Sure.
So I would say that the parking that is on Broadway is an advantage for us at this time. And should we have an alternative to that, we could look to disengage that down the road. But it's not something that I would want to see giving up simply for this, creating a sense of place. Understanding that, yeah, I am usually the person that hears about parking first. So understand where you're coming from on that.
But just clarify for me, those 2011 parking spots are within what are the boundaries?
So railroad tracks, railroad tracks
Yeah.
to Lansing,
Yep.
and then Mosier to Illinois. I didn't go all the way north, for example, on Main Street,
Yep.
and I didn't count Sacred Heart,
Just wanted
things like
to
that.
check what,
Yep.
what kind of area we were talking about.
Mhm.
So a pretty small area.
It is.
Thank you.
But
Yes.
I am resisting saying something regardless, there is parking space. We're talking about what, less than 20 parking spaces that, that we're using up and people are gonna, complain about that. And here we are talking about health, being a walkable city, and people don't wanna walk 1 to 2 blocks or maybe 3 blocks, to go to businesses. It doesn't make sense. I mean, it's, okay,
100% agree.
yeah, you can't be a walkable city and then refuse to walk. You want to,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we're trying to create space so that people can walk, and make it, and we're thinking, friendly and healthy city, and we're talking about well-being. And, we're preoccupied with just a few parking spaces within a small, limited area. That doesn't make sense.
I would tell you that these challenges that we are talking about this evening are faced for virtually every community across the state of Michigan. When I go to the Michigan Downtown Association Conference or any workshop, the number one topic that we all sit and talk about is parking. What are you doing? How are you doing it? Does someone have a different idea? And it's virtually the same conversation. That's why it's really, parking management is a system. And when you make a change, you have to be thinking, what are the unintended consequences, and be looking at it from a bigger picture. And it means constantly looking at this. The changes that we make this evening, in 6 months, I'm going to be looking at, okay, well, what are the good points? What are the pros and the cons, if you will, on each of the decisions? And if something doesn't work, we tweak it, we change it.
I just want to respond briefly because I agree with you about 95%. I want to also account for the 5% of, let's say you are in a hurry, you don't have time to walk 3 blocks, carrying an extremely large parcel. That happened. I was teaching a class For Art's Sake, and I had way too big of a box to be carrying 3 blocks. There are going to be instances where everybody, no matter how much they walk, I mean, I live like closer than some parking spaces to downtown, but yet I still have to drive downtown sometimes. And everybody has a different experience, and I just think we need to account for all experiences.
Well, I think part of that too is the idea of, I don't think we can control parking based on how we think people should be healthy or not, right? I mean, we just can't do that. I think it's important that people are, but the reality is then we might as well shut down the soda shop because they have really good ice cream that it's full of calories, right? That's what I mean. I think it's important to say like those things are important, but to then develop parking based on anything like that gets in a really slippery slope.
Yeah, Maureen.
If I were, to say, for me, priority is to make sure that we address, that we have enough parking for people who have mobility challenges. It's one of the big problems we have. And then, we can worry about people who don't necessarily have mobility challenges. If you're carrying a big load, you figure out when you go there, when the place is not going to be congested. Or if you're in a hurry, okay, don't go there during midday. Figure out when to do that. I am sympathetic, but I'm also saying let's be realistic, So there are. What are the priorities for us? Do we want free parking to enable, an influx of people to the downtown area? Of course, we want that. I chair the Isabella County Human Rights Committee. And one of the issues that come up to us again and again is challenges for people who have mobility issues. We need more of that, okay? So for me, that's a priority. Those particular spaces that you're talking about, I'm gonna say just make sure that they address this particular concern. And then we'll start looking at the other issues.
Regarding mobility issues, it is something to I'm going to take a small little tangent and just make sure that everyone understands. Most of the time when we are going to be putting an ADA space onto the street, it requires road work, curb work, sidewalk work. And so if it were a simple parking management issue, it would have been here on the list. But it is something that, it's the conversation that anytime we have a parking lot reconstruction, what is it that we can do? Where, how many spaces, where are those spaces located at? Can we eliminate curbs in some cases that can assist us as well? Sometimes though, decisions were made, not just decades ago, few decades ago, many decades ago, that were sort of locked into. And so in some places it's possible that where we've put them on the street, and we can always look again and see if there are other spaces. I don't know, I don't want to speak on behalf of the engineer, but it is something that we can certainly look at.
Thank you for at least addressing that. I want to make sure we are compliant enough, because that comes up.
Certainly.
It's one of the big complaints we get.
I really appreciate that, Maureen. And one thing I wanted to say was also there's the 1.25, 1.23% of people who bike, ride share, take the bus, walk downtown. Could we, as the commission, look at setting a goal of like creating program of some kind or accessibility of the downtown area to up that number at all? What if we could eat 1% off of no, I prefer to park on street, and move that over to no, I take a different form, so they're not bringing a car downtown. If we can eliminate cars downtown, then that opens up parking spots. So I mean, if we could make, I know they have the bus shelter down there. If we could set up, in the past, there was a iRide system that had the fixed routes through the north side of town. From what I understand, it wasn't economical at the time. If we could revisit anything with that, as far as like, is there a change in demand or anything? Is there resources or community partners we could involve there? If we could get a fixed bike shelter. I live downtown. I can't bike during the summer. If I were to bike, I would need to either haul my bike up a flight of stairs every night, or I would need a shelter to put it in. So I can't bike to work, even though it's 5-6 blocks away, I want to say. It's just outside of town. But how do we encourage people to use forms? It's marginal. It is marginal. It's not going to be that many people, but if we can get 1% of people who take their cars downtown and to not take their car downtown, then that opens up additional parking spots.
We should just get a people mover.
That's gonna be in the morning sun tomorrow.
Scooters. I'm all for it. With funding,
I can hear my phone ringing right now.
Scooters.
Just tell them we don't have the funding. It's not possible.
And I think too, really, we talk about the scooters.
Yes,
I think
we
that might
did.
change things too.
Yes, exactly.
Having scooters for people to, not health, but changing the amount of cars that are going downtown too. So.
I really like the bike shelter idea. I think that's, has that ever been looked at before?
No.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea.
One of the challenges is some apartments are accessible from the front of the building.
Yeah.
Some are in the back, some are on the side. So it's just when you think you've got it set just right, someone says, well, but I go up the back
Right.
stairs. I don't go in the front stairs. And so
That's not gonna-
something that we could look at. I don't know
Same like
enough about
having
them.
parking problems.
Sure.
It's gonna be a new type of
just
parking
the-
problem.
I was gonna say, it's a different kind of parking
Yes.
problem, not bikes, it's cars, so.
Are there any other questions?
Well, thank you. This is exhaustive, right? And exhausting too, right? But thank you for the good work and for doing this, really.
Thank you. All right,
Yes.
we'll get to work
Appreciate
on
it.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for hanging around through all the questions. Say, Brian sitting next to me, Liz, Brian, Mary, Amy.
All right. I think that we had a very productive work session. But at this time, I am willing to entertain
I'll move.
a motion to adjourn. All right, we have a motion to adjourn. We have a second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries 8:14. We are adjourned.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.